Today, I am joined by Ryan Duchak to talk about a subject that is at the heart of financial success, financial planning. And we're going to keep it big picture today. No charts, no jargon, no graphs, just a real conversation about why thoughtful financial planning matters. Let me first introduce Ryan. Ryan is a partner at the Monteverde Group and a retirement plan specialist. He's been at the Monteverde Group for 17 years and became partner in 2024. And he focuses on financial planning with a primary emphasis on 401k plans for companies and their employees, and has a particular expertise in post employment distribution strategies. So, Ryan, welcome and thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me, Larry. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. And we're going to keep this light and have it keep it conversational. So the question that I'm going to start with, though, is excuse me, when people hear the term financial planning, it can sound complicated. There can be barriers right off the bat. So how would you describe financial planning in simple terms?
Well, financial planning is complex. It's not complicated, is how I would answer that initially. And as far as what it is on an incredibly high level, it's a roadmap. It's a financial roadmap. The same when we're looking at retirement, we're looking at inheritance to children, things like that. I typically equate that to your financial roadmap and view it from a standpoint of if you were going to go to Florida tomorrow, you're going to drive to Florida. You're not just going to jump in your car, turn it on, and start heading south. You're going to plug the address you're heading to into a map and whatever app you're using these days on it, and you're going to determine the most efficient route to take from a cost standpoint, a time standpoint, a stop standpoint, and that's ultimately what a financial plan is. You're creating that same roadmap from a financial space of retirement, college planning, life insurance. What happens if something happens prematurely and something happens? How does this all integrate together to create the most efficient retirement or whatever specific goals you have strategies inside of that plan? It's very simple to view it as just I want to retire one day. How do I do that? Well, you only have one bucket of money coming in. You have a lot of different avenues where it's going out of. So figuring out the most efficient strategy to hit that retirement goal, that college goal, whatever it may be, in all in one space.
So is it fair to say without a plan, it's just a dream?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, yes. And the plan's constantly changing as well. I can create a plan today, but financial planning is a process. It's not just an event. If you get a lump sum of wealth or something, that's a very simple. It's not simple, but it's a simple thing to execute that specific event. Financial plan is constantly changing. What happens if you have an additional child? What happens if your job changes? What happens if your retirement goals change? At 25, my retirement goal was um, one thing, and at 45, it's a vastly different thing that I'm looking at. And now I have three kids. I didn't have those in my 20s, so I need to update that plan relatively often to make sure A, I'm in line to meet those goals, or B, change those goals.
So while a process might sound cumbersome to a lot of people, it really is just the reality because your situation changes, your goals change, your needs change. So it's something that doesn't have to be cumbersome, but needs to be updated and kept current.
Well,
Is
it's
that
not cumbersome to you, it's cumbersome to me.
there you go.
Running the plan, that's the work's on our end. And to be fair, the individual receiving the plan does need to put effort in with providing us with information and data. Um, but we deal with the process side. You, as the individual receiving the plan, you just need to give me the information. And with technology these days, there's a lot of great benefits to it from streamlining that information. We use a software at the Monteverde Group that ultimately you can have it automatically import a lot of that information. You can link your banking profile to this online account, and it actually pulls your spending and creates that budget. One of the biggest hurdles I would say with financial planning is budgeting. It's the B word in our office that clients do not like to hear
Hmm.
and don't like to do, which I understand it. It's cumbersome. Um, but at the end of the day, it allows us to have the best data to make the most efficient plan. I can work from
Clarity.
I make X dollars and I spend approximately this. We can work from that. But if we're able to see the actual line items in the budget, I can look through it and have that conversation with you. I like to pick on Starbucks when I'm looking at people's line item budgets of, hey, and at the end of the day, it's your money, so it's your decision. But my job is to educate you on those decisions in just as a simplistic, which this might be an antiquated equation. If you're spending $5 a day on a cup of coffee and you're going to work 4 days a week, that's when you're getting that. So I guess you're not going to Starbucks, you're going someplace cheaper. And that's $20 a week, which isn't a lot of money. But when we equate that out, you're at almost $1,200 a year on your coffee spend. Is that something you're comfortable with? If the answer is yes, great, let's do it. If not, I can show you more efficient ways to spend that 1200. And the reality is you're still going to drink coffee. So what if you brew at home? Let's figure that out. Okay, now instead of $1,200 a year, you're spending 600. Let's just cut it in half. Okay, what can I do with that other $600 towards your financial plan or your financial goals that will make life easier, your financial life easier and more flexible for you to give you more financial freedom. And then ultimately my job is to deliver that information to you and you act on that. If you say, great, that's wonderful, I don't care, I love my Starbucks, I'm not changing that, fine. It's not my money. It's not going to impact me, but you understand the impact. Prior to this conversation, you might not have realized you're thinking you're just spending $5 a day. That's relatively nothing. Well, when I equate that to 1,200 a year or 12,000 over 10 years, how important is that coffee to you?
Sure.
If it's your lifeline, fine. If it's not, now we adjust that.
I've had similar conversations with clients about long-term care who think, well, it's $300 a day for long-term care. That's a nice meal out on a Saturday night or something. But when you run out the numbers and you realize that by the time someone might need any care, it's 120,000 a year, and by the time they're 85, we're talking about taking half a million to $1 million out of a portfolio to pay for long-term care. It's the same kind of situation. Is that a fair
That's not a
comment?
Saturday night out any
Not a
longer.
Saturday night out,
Yeah,
exactly. So, let me
that's
ask you
very
this.
fair.
Let me ask you this question then. Let's say I have a client who is a little bit maybe more at the more mature. That's the wrong word, but more seasoned, a little more successful, has money. How does or does the process for financial planning change, or how does it change for maybe a client who has who's been there, done that a little bit already, and just needs a little. I don't know. What is the process like for that kind of a client?
It's a similar process, actually. It's still, you're still going to have goals, and those goals might be different. So the goals for the 25-year-old who just had a baby are vastly different than the 55-year-old that their kids are grown and gone, but they might have grandkids now, and college funding for the grandkids might be a goal. It might not, but taking a look at those, estate planning inside of that, it's, you still have goals, you still have needs. Long-term care, as you mentioned, we're going to be looking at that, and how does that impact your overall strategy? If I have a $3 million portfolio and I think you said $500,000 in expense on that long-term care example, how does that impact my inheritance strategy to my children? I want to leave them, I've got 3 kids, I want to leave them each $1 million. Well, if I eat out $500,000 of that, that doesn't work any longer. So, how can we look at that and plan for that to make sure that that doesn't happen? Might be the long term care policy. And that's where I would loop someone like you in on the plan. From the financial planning standpoint, I'm not looking at that aspect. I'm looking at the overall structure and the needs, and then I'm bringing someone like you in. I can uncover that we need some type of long term care to meet this goal. Then I bring you as the expert in there to say, how do we most efficiently do this? Here's my dollars that I have to work with. Here's what I'm looking to accomplish. Help me do this. Same thing with trust work, estate planning, things like that. We're not lawyers, we're not drafting your trusts, but we can uncover that you need one based on everything in this conversation. You need to have some trusts in place because of those 3 kids, you don't want to leave them money outright. You want to have some control on that. Okay, great. Now we loop in the expert, the lawyer, on that and bring them into it. Pure wealth management. How how does that person's goal, and I'm still focusing on that 55-year-old, how do we reduce their risk as much as possible inside their portfolio to still meet their goals? What rate of return averages do we need to hit? We're looking at that portfolio to determine if it's structured as efficiently as possible to meet that goal. Not just efficient portfolio management. It's for you. That's kind of the difference. It's very simple to say, well, I need 7% average rate of return. My question in return is why? And that's what the financial plan uncovers. And your answer might still be you need 7%, but now we at least see that and we run those numbers to see, yes, if you don't hit 7%, here's the negative impact of it. If you hit 10, here's the positive impact of it. So managing that risk in getting to that wealth manager, what they exactly need to accomplish is what that plan uncovers, which inside of the Monteverde Group, a lot of times we will have one person running the plan that's not the wealth manager on for this specific client. So we can, sometimes it is, but we can also tailor that specifically to work together and have that big picture roadmap to show that wealth manager, here's what we need to do. And it makes their job easier, number one. And the client, it ultimately our end goal is help you sleep easier at night and create that roadmap. So it's, hey, if we do A, B, C, and D, Z is what occurs in with this highest probability of success. That makes you a lot more comfortable.
Sure, absolutely. And what I also hear you saying is that financial planning encompasses so much more. It's wealth management, it's tax planning, it's estate planning, it's insurance. All of that is all encompassed in financial planning.
Social
Uh,
security
Social
planning,
security planning.
everything.
Absolutely.
Disability planning. What happens if if I'm working with a doctor who's a surgeon? Okay, that's great. You're making a ton of money. The financial plan or the investment plan, retirement plan, that's kind of easy at
Mhm.
that point. You're
Sure.
making a lot of money and it works. What happens if you cut your finger and you're chopping vegetables for dinner and you sneeze and cut a tendon in your hand? Oh, now the plan just changed, and guess what? It changed for the negative.
Yep.
Now we
How do you
can
protect
plan
it?
for that inside of the financial plan and look at whether a disability insurance policy makes sense. Look at the cost and see how that impacts your overall plan to to figure out what is efficient for you.
So the process is really all encompassing.
Absolutely. All encompassing. And it's up to you as the client of what you want to uncover. We can the software that we use, I tell a lot of people it has the mechanics of a Ferrari. You can use it for a Sunday drive though. going 30 miles an hour. We can do that. I can simply do budgeting in a financial plan, or we can look at everything. And our preference obviously is to look at everything because the better data in, the better data out. But we can tailor it to your specific needs and wants, and work that plan out.
Makes sense. So let me ask you, in your career, have you come across common misconceptions about financial planning that clients may have that either prevent them or give them pause before engaging in the process?
Fear of the unknown is probably the biggest one, and the cost associated with it, and um, I don't qualify for it. I don't have enough money for it. There's a lot of misconceptions inside of the financial plan, or even I make enough money where I don't need that, and it's not as simple as dollars and cents. It boils down to efficiency, that tax management. Everyone can benefit, and ultimately, the cost associated to having a financial plan run on its own for you is pennies when you compare it to the long term benefit of what it can accomplish.
Sure.
And,
I
and
mean, as like you said, not to interrupt, but you don't just get in the car and start heading south to Florida. So, the consequences are you don't accomplish what you wanted to accomplish.
yeah, and
Um,
it gives knowledge is power to us. It gives you the knowledge of the decisions you make financially speaking, and that can be on any level. It can be as simple as if I'm talking to that doctor and I want to buy a Porsche, can I do it? Yeah, you can, but here's the negative impacts. And if I'm talking to somebody who's just starting out and not doesn't have the wealth that that doctor already has, or the earning potential or something like that, it's still just as important to run a plan for them to make sure they're running their budget as efficiently as they can, and have that same knowledge. It especially in today's society, with that subscription society we live in, knowing where your money's going and figuring that out, and then is there a better way to spend it? If you like that Starbucks, fine. If you like all your streaming services and you have to have all of them, that's fine. But know how much it's costing you, and then be able to make that informed decision is much more valuable in our opinion than just saying, yeah, I need Netflix, Hulu, I need all of them.
yeah, no, that makes sense, and you're answering all my future questions, so I appreciate you being thorough. Let me ask you: you've worked with a lot of individuals and families. What mindset or habits do the ones who are really successful in managing their wealth? What kind of habits do they have, or their mindset? Sorry.
Saving first and sticking to the goal. My I don't want to say my favorite client, my best financial planning client, I will say, constantly says I can't afford that.
Okay.
Now, this couple, they can afford a lot of things, and they can afford it, but based on their plan, they are so diligent with it that they set their monthly budget. And just for example, if their entertainment budget is $500 a month,
Yeah.
and they spend that at the beginning of the month, and I call them, invite them out to a play or something like that. No, I can't afford that. You can buy that $100 ticket. I know your situation. You very much can, but they constantly say I can't afford this because they're diligent with their savings, and that's ultimately the best technique that people use, is sticking to that plan, or the strategy behind that plan, and making sure they're putting the money where it's most important to them to meet their goals. And that's how people develop that financial freedom to be able to say, I want to work, or I don't have to though. And that's ultimately most people in today's day and age, and myself included. I don't ever, the way my mind works, the way my brain is, I don't think I will ever retire. But you better bet that I will have the freedom to work when I want and how I want. That's what's important to me. Where if I want to, at age 55, if things change for me and I get burnt out and I say I'm done, I want to be able to say that. I don't foresee that happening, but I want to have the opportunity to do that if I want to. That's financial freedom in setting myself up for that. That's success to us. It's not money related. It's not dollars. One of the biggest issues I have that clients will come to me is how much money do I need to retire? That's the first question.
Okay.
And I'm a smart aleck, I'll say is the
No,
politest term I can use in here. And so my answer is zero.
this is a family show.
Exactly. My answer to that is always zero. You can retire tomorrow. You want to eat ramen noodles for the rest of your life? You can retire tomorrow. You want to live under a bridge? You can retire tomorrow. There's no dollar number. It's I need to look at you in your financial picture and do a deep dive into that before I can say, here's how much you need to retire and here's why. We have to back into that.
Everybody's situation is different,
Everybody's.
and everyone's
Everybody's.
goals are different. Absolutely, that makes sense. Um, is there anything else before we wrap up that you want to make sure that you get out there to someone who may be interested in exploring or learning more about this financial planning process, and then we'll bring it to a head after.
Don't be afraid. The don't have paralysis by analysis. It's a lot of people are fearful of the unknown. It's on your end, it's a simple process. It's getting us information.
Yeah,
That's what's important. We will
yeah,
ask you all the questions. We will hold your hand through this. And as I said earlier, it's a process. It's not an event. So start the process. We'll hold your hand through it basically for life and walk you through. Use an expert to do it. Don't just the information's out there. You could run your own financial plan. I'm not going to pretend that we have this hidden secret that none of the world knows about. You could do it yourself with
sure. And
spreadsheets
I
and
and I could buy a book that says, brain surgery for dummies.
exactly. You
Yeah,
you can do that,
yeah,
but it's a much more daunting task to do it yourself, whereas put the work on somebody else and let us walk you through that and feed you the questions because there's a lot of things in the conversations I have with financial planning clients where it's, I hadn't thought of that. I why does that matter? Well, it does. Like social security planning. I'm just going to take social security at 65 when I'm
right.
eligible. Why? Why is the most prevalent question we ask people. So why not do this is an even bigger question. It's get that roadmap, start the process. It's not overly expensive to do. It's time related is how we charge. So it's based on complexity. Our financial planning costs will vary depending on the data we need to sift through and work through. So if we're spending 100 hours on a plan, which we have done before, that's
Yeah.
very rare. That was a very complex situation versus 10 hours. The price is going to differentiate. So ultimately, my answer to you is ask the questions, have the consultation, sit down. It doesn't cost you anything. Start the process. You may decide you don't want to go through with it for any reason, or you may realize it's a much simpler task than you thought. And it's
I think that's often the case with most things.
absolutely the fear of the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is often the case.
Yep. Well, Ryan, thank you. I think what I've heard, and you did a brilliant job of summarizing everything. But it's not about. It's also not about hitting some magic number. It's about building a life of security and opportunity and impact, whatever your specific goals are and situation is. And it's about the process, as you said. It's sort of the journey, not the event. So thank you for taking the time and being here. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the financial process, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Monteverde Group. You can give us a call at 412-391-0419. Again, 391-0419, or go to the website monteverdegroup.com. But thank you. Appreciate you being here, and we'll look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks for having me, Larry. Good to talk to you.
The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. This material contains only general descriptions and is not a solicitation to sell any insurance product or security, nor is it intended as any financial, legal, or tax advice. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.